Owls really are a mysterious creature. Even though we know a lot about them now in the modern age, there's still lots of things that surprise us when it comes to owls. No more than perhaps the snowy owl, which is the main subject of this video. But I'm going to talk about some other species as well, and some of the migratory things they've done in the past, and how they have bemused us quite somewhat when it comes to what we thought we knew. Now firstly, owls, of which there are well over 250 species of all around the world, are very territorial. Most of them will live in one certain area most of their lives. They'll only ever move from that area if their habitat is perhaps destroyed, if food becomes really scarce or something like that. So an example might be the Indian Scops owl. We currently have 2 of them here at Owl Adventures, with a view to get even more of them this year as the business grows, because they're such a great bird for handling. People love their cute small size, so they're just a great little bird. Now in the wild, they will live in dense forest areas, and quite often won't really ever leave an area much bigger than maybe 20 or 30 metres squared, especially if in that area they've got lots of food to eat, lots of insects, little birds, lots of rodents, things like that, because why go anywhere else? But owls, they are all about surviving, just like most birds of prey and predators. So it makes sense to stay in one place, and as long as the temperature and the environment is suitable for them all year round, they will stay where they are. Now when it comes to keeping warm in cold weather, owls are pretty good at it. Of course, the more Arctic they are, the larger they are, the better they are at it as well. All those layers of feathers can be tightened up to keep themselves insulated, and as long as they're getting enough food, then they can survive quite well. But of course, birds, various birds around the world will migrate. That act of flying from one part of the world to another. Sometimes it's hopping across one sea, sometimes it's flying from southern Africa right up to northern Europe. In fact, in the UK we do have some birds that have started to over-migrate when they've ended up in the UK and they were meant to stop somewhere in Central Europe. So that is really commonly known. But owls aren't really well known for it. Now there are 2 exceptions that we know of quite a bit, which are the short-eared owl and the long-eared owl. They're both found in the UK, and they're also found in Europe as well. They do fly here from northern parts of Europe for a warmer winter, so they are known to migrate, and some of them stay here all year round as well. Now the snowy owl is a really interesting one because it's the Arctic bird, or the Arctic owl, that's what I usually say. And people do ask me, would I ever get a snowy owl? Well, I have worked with them before. There's a volunteer we had right at the beginning of the business back in 2011 who actually got herself a snowy owl and hand reared it, and that was a male snowy owl. She called him Casper, not to be confused with our Casper we've got now, our barn owl, and he was a lovely tame bird. And then she ended up sort of moving away and keeping the bird in an aviary herself, and I remember going and borrowing it one day for a Harry Potter event, and well, he didn't like me. He'd obviously got very used to his enclosure, very used to being with just that one person, and he was very nervous and quite aggressive towards me as well. So I said I won't ever use him again because it just wasn't suitable. Now this is because snowy owls are actually a bit more nervous, they tend to be, than some of the other larger owl family, and they also get very warm very quickly. They are covered in feathers, big fluffy feet, everything is designed for surviving in minus degrees sort of conditions, as it were. So if we had a snowy owl, even if we had a lovely tame one that we've hand reared and we're taking it into these care homes, and by the way, the care homes, which is one of the main kind of weekday sort of work we do, things, essentially they are pretty warm. There are some of them like a sauna, because of course the elderly like the heating on and we have to go in and be like, whew. So luckily the owls are only in there for maybe an hour or so, and they're absolutely fine. But having a snowy owl in an environment like that wouldn't really be that suitable. In fact, we got a snowy owl just kind of given to us about 6 or 7 years ago, which was so nervous. We put it in an aviary, we didn't really touch it or anything, we just made sure it had food and things, but it unfortunately died, which we believe of anxiety, only a few days later. I did do a video on that actually, if you want to look back at the channels there. So obviously the thumbnail to get your attention was snowy owl in Texas. There have been several sightings of snowy owls in Texas. Now, I've been to Texas myself, but I stayed mostly in the northern part near Dallas. I wasn't really down in the desert, and of course Texas only has a bit of desert. Really, if you want desert, you're going out to Arizona and places like that. However, it is a warm country, and in the summer it can get really, really warm. Now, I was there in October 2017, and it was quite sunny and it was pleasantly warm. It made you think, well, yeah, if it's going to be more warm than this in the summer months, then clearly it's not really a place for something like a snowy owl. So it is quite a surprising thing that they are there. We've thought about this and gone, well, okay, essentially the young, they are reared in the Arctic conditions, or semi-Arctic perhaps, and it's quite normal for them to then fledge and search for their own territory to hunt and survive in, and they may end up in northern states of America, and that's quite expected. But to get as far south as Texas, that does raise quite a question. Is that because food supply is really scarce and they're going to places that's warmer? They'd rather be warm but have food, perhaps? Is it because they're just getting things wrong? Is there a global warming element to it? Which, if there is, it's kind of a backwards way. If anything, they'd be going more north to keep cool. But there's another thing I should mention here. We don't know for sure if these snowy owls are genuinely wild birds. Now, in this country, in the UK, occasionally a snowy owl is spotted, maybe on a fence post somewhere, or on a meadow, on the grass, or something like that. And people will say, wow, we've got a snowy owl that's flown down from the Arctic. But usually in this country, what you're seeing is an escaped bird. It's just someone's, I don't like to use the word pet, but someone's captive owl that's gotten free. And maybe it's hunting and surviving quite well, but that's all it is. And of course, if it is on the grass there, you're not going to see if it's got anklets on or whatever, so you can't really verify that that is the case. Now, in the USA, there are now more breeding programs than there ever used to be for captive birds of prey, for the zoo industry, if you like, and it's still not as common, shall we say, as it is in the UK and in parts of Europe and so on, but it is now going on. So it doesn't mean, again, that it's a wild snowy owl that's been spotted, which have been spotted sat on all kinds of different perches, as clear as anything during the day as well. And these photos show that it isn't a barn owl that they've mistaken for a snowy owl. These are genuine snowy owls. Now, there are lots of other species of owl that are thought to never migrate at all, but the northern saw-whet owl has been spotted, somehow spotted in the dark at night, travelling great distances as well. It's another example of how these owls keep surprising us. I'll give you another example of how owls can surprise us, and in a really good way too. The barn owl, which is found all around the world, is said to have a lifespan, especially in places like the UK, of no more than about 5 years. 5 years if you're lucky, of course. Now, in captivity, we know they can live over 20 years because of the protections they have from the wild. They're not going to get hit by cars, as long as they don't fly around near a busy road. They're never going to run out of food. They're going to have the opportunity to take them to the vet and things like that. The same with any well-managed animal in captive care. Now, when the young barn owls are in their tree hollows or in nest boxes, there are various agencies, groups who will go out and actually put rings on the young, because then if one is found dead, they can track it, they know how old it is, etc. It's really good for data collection, for conservation work. And about 5 years ago, one of these ringers was up a ladder and they were putting the rings on the young, and they noticed the mum at the back had a ring on. So they quickly scanned it and took the data back, had a look at the records, and this female barn owl in the wild registered at 21 years old. Now that's mind-blowing to think an owl in the wild, like a barn owl, has survived that long, and all those years has avoided all those things that could kill it. You know, like I say, trains, lorries, even drowning as well can happen a lot to owls, especially female barn owls. That's usually when they are finished rearing their young and they're filthy, they've been in there for ages, they go out and the first thing they want to do is have a wash. Now they're typically on a farm, so often the first thing they find is a trough full of water water, they go in not realising how deep it is, and they drown, unfortunately. All farmers have to do is put some steps in the side and they can climb back up, so it's a useful way around that. Lots of old-fashioned farms are probably going to be best as well, so lots of meadows and wild areas, lots and lots of hedgerows, plenty of food, and I guess a combination of good location and just luck. So yes, the owls really do continue to surprise us. And essentially, if someone said to me, do snowy owls migrate? I would have to say, potentially, yes, because, and that's the other thing as well, I need to maybe Google this, how far does a bird have to fly, you know, to move, to migrate? Obviously, if it goes over a sea, if it goes a big distance from one country to another, we'd call that migration, especially if it went from one particularly cold climate to a warmer climate or something like that. But if an owl travelled, I don't know, 30 miles, 50 miles, is that any kind of migration? Is it semi-migration? Is it just moving house? I don't know. Maybe you know more about that and you'd like to comment below. So there you go. Snowy owls have been spotted in Texas and other places you wouldn't expect them. Just goes to show these mysterious birds keep on surprising us all the time. Hope you enjoyed that video, and as always, thanks for watching.